Now, let's deal with the matters of impending strikes and also why all of us have gone quiet and silent when we all pleaded with the doctors to go back to work. They have gone back to work. There was a promise to get a conditions of service signed by the end of October. That has not happened. Is it September? Yeah, by end of September, that's what I should be saying, really. That has not happened. So what's going to happen? Are they going to hit the streets again? First, let's speak to Christian Adepoku. He is president of the NAGRAT, that is the Graduate Teachers Association. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Great. What is this thing about the threat to go on strike beginning Monday? And your guys in Tamale are the first to have given this indication that by Monday they will be going on strike, laying down their tools. What is the problem?
Thank you very much, Thompson. I think the threat to go on strike has been in the news for almost a week and a half now. And they have to do with directives that were given by National Labour Commission for our employer, in this case, Government of Ghana, to pay teachers some outstanding arrears and so on, which have not been paid. If I go into details of it, we are talking of teachers who have been employed by the Government of Ghana for the past 2-3 years. And when it was time to pay them, they paid only 3 months arrears. And the remaining outstanding salaries for 2-3 years have not been paid.
There is salaries outstanding for 3 years. Is that what you're saying?
Can you repeat that, Phantom?
Salaries outstanding for three years. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly what I'm saying.
How did that happen?
People have been employed from 2012, 2013, 2014, and their arrears have not been paid. We have gone on strike on this matter before, and in November last year, the National Labour Commission issued a directive that the teachers should be paid. We have all had an agreement that by June this year, all of them should have been paid. They were supposed to get in processes and be paid by June this year. But unfortunately, out of the 15,000 involved, only 5,000 were paid. Apart from that, we also have outstanding issues related to other allowances such as teachers, and these have also been in arrears for 3 years now, which have not been paid. And these ones, we have constantly reminded our employers, we have tried to use diplomatic means to make sure that these things are adhered to. But unfortunately, it didn't happen. And constant reminders that we sent to the National Labour Commission to be given to our employers, and sometimes directly engaging our employers to make sure that they pay didn't yield any results until the time that we sent them notice that we were to embark on strike on the 7th of this month. That was when they saw it important to start dealing with the issues. Since then, they gave us 10 days, that within the 10 days, they were going to put things together, and that when we meet, they should be able to give us some positive results. Unfortunately, the 10 days of the last day, yesterday they had a call to us asking us that we should give them time for the Monday, that meeting, or Tuesday, we could have that meeting so that the issue could be resolved. So we are at the brink, but we as unions want to see a peaceful resolution of the issue. If that should happen, everybody will be happy. But if by Tuesday the meeting does not yield any result at it, then actually the teachers cannot be blamed for anything that will happen after.
Is it also the case that the collective agreement between teachers and government was signed on the 31st of December 2009 and has since expired 31st of December 2011, and no new one has been, agreed on?
Yes, that is also one of the issues. It is true that the last time we had a collective agreement was in 2009 and it expired in 2011. We have had media engagement on that. The thing that really held us back had to do with the category 2 and 3 allowances, which were still, organized labor was still negotiating with the Service and Salary Commission. But now we have finished with those category 2 and 3 allowances. And so at the last meeting last week, Service and Salary Commission has assured us that negotiations will start again, and therefore that's been a problem because we started discussing the non-financial aspect with our employer, didn't finish anyway, and then we're waiting for the category 2 and 3 ones to have now been concluded with Service and Salary Commission. It is unless for us to leave our employer and try to incorporate those that will be related to our service classification. So that was one of the issues, but we have understood that we will continue engaging them to that one because that one cannot be solved within the next 3-4 days. So that is not the issue as of now. The bigger issue has to do with the allowances and non-payment of arrears to the
As I understand, you're talking about allowances, incremental credits. You're talking about what you call the travel and transport allowances and so on. But we know that government gave out about 4.5 million, isn't it?
Yes, government gave 4.5 million Ghana cedis. But even at that meeting, a lot of questions were raised. That money has been announced and a lot of noise has been made about it. But the questions that were asked have not been answered. Because if you talk about the car maintenance allowance, from 2013, teachers have not been paid that money. And so we asked government to give us the details as to which year are they paying? Are they paying for everything or they're paying for 1 year or 2 years? We said at the next meeting they should be able to answer on that. Those that have gone on a transfer and the deserved transfer grant, which is 2 months gross salary for the person who is going on transfer. We wanted to know how many people are captured in that amount we are talking about who were not given the figures. And so we expect that the next meeting, all these issues should be resolved properly. It is not just announcing that this money has been released that will solve the problem, but is it covering everybody? Is it covering all the time? And is it going to pay all the outstanding arrears that we are talking about?
Hold on briefly for me. The minister is right here in the studio. Why again do we have to get to this point? They are threatening to go on strike on Monday. Why?
It's labor relations itself is a very complex subject. And there would always be grievances that needs to be addressed. And you need to have a clear understanding of what the issues are. I'm encouraged that you are getting him to distill what the real problems are. Now, the threat of a strike action, in my view, will not inure to NAGRAT's benefit. I have engaged them, and let me just indicate quite strongly that many of it is work in progress. For instance, the allowances that you spoke about, I personally got involved. I can show you that some information that even the Controller Accountant General related to me when I needed to appreciate what had happened to the 4.5 million, which had been promised in April, but subsequently paid because of some difficulties in releases from the Bank of Ghana. But eventually, that has been transferred to the GS. So it's between NAGRAT now and GS to sit down and see what the 4.5 will cover. But it certainly will cover only arrears, not salaries. Now, in respect of teachers, 2 years, 1 year, 6 months not being paid, is akin to what has happened within the health sector. And let me just use this to analyze a deeper problem. Even with the fund arrangement that government has, health and education are exempt. So there can be recruitment and employment within the health sector and within the educational sector. I hear an erroneous impression sometimes created that there's a freeze on public sector employment. No, it does not affect the health sector, nor does it affect the education sector. But within the education sector and health sector, the president has set up a cabinet pay reform committee because we need to reform the payroll, tightens control, eliminate fraud and ghost. And maybe today, let me hazard an explanation of what is ghost. It's not about going to the cemetery and finding a worker and bringing it. When you employ without financial clearance, you have created a ghost for government, because it means that the person must be incorporated into the IPPD of the controller and accepted as a legitimate lawful employee of that particular entity. Now, if you go into employment for 1 year without financial clearance, the employer is not even aware that you are employed at that material point in time. So the Ministry of Finance and Controller has set up a 3-month period for absorption and accommodation of that category of employees. I have time and again explained that we are working very closely with the Ministry of Finance and the Controller Accountant General to improve the payroll landscape, which will mean that we should use IT to reduce, minimize, and probably even eliminate the risk. I agree with them to the extent that no worker, whether a nurse, a teacher, or a junior doctor, or a new houseman, must be employed for 3-6 months without pay. I don't think that is a fair labor practice, and I'm not sure we want to encourage or tolerate that as a system that government is pleased about. Certainly, we are not. But I think that NAGRAT must bear with government. Like I said, when the warrant was issued in April, there were difficulties with releases. Therefore, it eventually got paid, I'm sure, about 3-4 weeks ago. It's been processed by the GES, so they would get those incremental allowance. I'm also aware that one of the issues that they took to the National Labour Commission even got the Minister of Finance, my colleague Honorable Setekwe, appear before them and to give them some assurances. So for government, and I think that on the quiet, I was discussing that with my colleague who has some background and interest in the management of the economy. Compensation is one of the major expenditure points of government in Ghana. And we need to watch it. Having been at the Ministry for Employment for a year now, I've come to a compelling conclusion that we need some reform of the public and civil service of Ghana.
To some of the specifics that he raises.
Yes.
How else do you explain, I don't really get it, that someone has been employed for 2 years, he's not been paid?
Yes, I would explain that.
And are you saying it is the ghost scenario that you refer to? The Ministry of Education perhaps got them, or the education service got them but didn't clear them, and it's taking 2 years. That's why they are not paid.
You know, the Controller Accountant General will respond to a stimulus from the Ministry of Finance. Which stimulus is that we have given you clearance to employ. For instance, let me use the nurses. I have a letter referred to me from the Ministry of Finance that 7,900 nurses have been cleared. Now, it means that they are now gainfully in the employment of government. But because of government new policy directive to eliminate payroll fraud, there is a due diligence committee led by the Auditor General's office, which works with the HR of many of these institutions, including GS and Ghana Health Service, which will do an update of the employees, including teachers, which must mean, one, when did that particular person report to work? Where did the person report to work? Is there evidence that since the person reported to work, the person is at post? All this have to be evaluated by a committee for what is referred to as a validation exercise. Not until the validation exercise is completed, you cannot be paid by government and by the Controller Accountant General. And that just affected the recent strike action I had by psychiatric nurses. We had done the validation for almost 400 of them. Regrettably, the president was jokingly telling me that he in particular was not paid, Emmanuel. Now he needs to go through that validation process, which means that he is at post. Genuinely, in his case, one can testify that he's at post. So I think that for both NAGRAT, nurses, junior doctors, we need to holistically deal with this problem. And I agree that there is a committee now chaired by the Minister of Finance with Controller, GS, Minister of Health. And many of it, Samson, Transnet is not even associated with the Ministry of Employment. Like I've jokingly said, I'm just a fire tender. When the heat is on, you find water and come and deal with it as a facilitator. But much of it has to do with collation of data, which is largely an HR function. Thankfully, the Public Services Commission is setting up an HRM system, which will reduce this. The Controller Accountant General is also at some painstaking reform, even to allow for private participation, so that we can improve the efficiency.
Okay, see, let me see. How do you tell? Don't speak to Christian Adepoku. Speak to this lady Florence. She says that she has been unpaid. She's been teaching for 3 years. She's not been paid, not a penny.
Does she have an appointment letter? When was the appointment letter issued? As she reported at Post, I say there is a committee at the Auditor General's office which is doing that. Maybe
is that possible? Is that possible to have a situation where this lady will proceed to go and teach and stay in the classroom for 3 years without an appointment letter? Do you see any such thing happening?
You see, when you say appointment letter, you may have an appointment letter which is not cleared by the Minister of Finance. For me, that is an unending process.
Okay.
And that generates
she says she has an appointment letter, and that they were told that they need
financial clearance.
They need to be giving a quota by the Ministry of Finance.
Absolutely, which is what I call the financial clearance from the Ministry of Finance. Let me just give you this example.
No,
you
but
understand
it takes 3 years.
Oh, I'll give you a good example. We currently have 7,900 nurses. Day before yesterday, they were in my office. We are keen in, for purposes of October salaries, 7,900 nurses to be paid. As at yesterday, only 5,000 of them haven't been validated, were keyed into the IPPD of controller. So it means that at the end of October, a minimum of 5,000 of them would have been absorbed now and paid the accumulated arrears together with their salary. So the same thing is being done for the teachers, and I think that NAGRAT must bear with government. Let's all go through this process. I don't want to share some information. For instance, in respect of the teachers, we have some damning revelation where a driver is now at the status of a director or deputy director. How can that happen? Through the validation effort. So I'm just telling you that there is more to this process, not to the lady example you gave, but I think that fairly we should accept that due diligence must happen. We need to do the validation. They must cooperate. I empathize with her that it's taking too long for her to get her salary. I'm aware that finance have granted some quota in terms of some numbers which will be paid. But for nurses and teachers, the continuous resort to strike.
Okay, let me see if I can speak to Chris briefly and let him off the phone, because he's been on the phone for quite a while. I'm sure you are familiar with the explanations that Honorable Haruna Iddrisu is giving. Why are you unable to find some space for the suggestion he's making?
I think that sometimes government gives out directives and comes out with policies as means of what I would call a firefighting approach to some of the issues. What Honorable is talking about, the directive to pay teachers or Ghanaian workers 3 months' salary and not paying their arrears, came at a time that for this policy, what was happening was that they had what they call replacement. When somebody goes on retirement, when somebody leaves the service, when somebody dies or something, that person is replaced. And that was a policy that was issued by the Minister of Finance during Honorable Kwajoba and Redu's time. And it had operated until 2013, when the Minister of Finance came out with this new policy. Besides that, General Education Service, every year, they do their projections. And they send the list, the figures to Minister of Finance that this is the number of teachers you will need. And these are the people that you will need to pay for. So these things were in existence until what they call the ethnic platform was introduced. And then it brought a whole lot of complications. The problem is those backlogs were not cleared. They were not cleared before this policy came. And so those people have continuously suffered up to today. Yes, the Honorable is saying that there are some rot in the system and so on. That may be true. But there are better ways of clearing the rot than to allow people who have been legitimately employed for 3 years to continue to suffer. As we speak right now, they all know that there is a problem with the ICPE section of the Ghana Education Service, right from the district level to the national level. So in the process of clearing this rot, the first thing you do is to tackle how you're going to reform ICPE and not to let teachers who have been legitimately employed continue to suffer for 3 years. I think it is not right. And then let me also say that yes, we appreciate what the Minister of Employment is doing. But if he can talk to his colleague ministers at the center of this issue, I think they know more. And they know that they could have done better than what they have done so far. We are relying solely on the speculations and rumors and few discoveries of rot and other things to generalize. And I don't think it is fair. Yes, if you have found a driver who has been promoted to the level of a director, go into it and find out, because somebody could have promoted that person. So investigate that. But it doesn't mean that somebody who has been legitimately employed must be made to suffer for it. We got a directive from National.
Okay, but it must be repeated that he didn't say that is an excuse for your situation, right?
But I can tell you that when we go to the negotiation table at any time, these are some of the issues that came
okay.
come out.
Now from what he says, it does appear that if you go on a strike from Monday or any time, so shortly, it may be just punishing the pupils and students, because you may not be able to have the solution. It's not ready.
Something. As I speak right now, in April this year, actually in March, we had a meeting with Honorable Obijeto on our issues. And the Ghana Education Service could not provide us information that was needed to be able to resolve the issue. So Honorable Obijeto said, Ghana Education Service to go ahead and gather more information and meet us 1 month time to discuss the issue. From that March up to the time I'm speaking now, it was when the issuance of notice of strike came that this issue has come up again.
Okay.
We continuously reminded them.
Interesting.
By people, when you have threatened that you go on strike, the day that we threatened that you go on strike, 3 days after that one, we had three meetings scheduled on that same Wednesday. National Labour Commission wanted to meet us, the Ghana Education Service wanted to meet us, and the Minister of Employment wanted to meet us on the same day.
Okay.
If they had attached that urgency to this issue from April to today, we wouldn't be at the brink that we are. Yes, he is saying that the strike will not inure to our benefit. Yes, we are not saying strike should inure to our benefit. What we are saying is that what is due people who are suffering out there, who have been teaching for 3 years and have not been paid, must be given to them.
Okay.
The teacher is as we speak right now, something.
Yes.
Even if you force a teacher to go to the classroom, let's be realistic. Somebody who has not been paid for 3 years, what kind of results are you expecting from such a worker?
It's serious. I will not disclose. I will not disclose the suffering of some of them to you. What they tell me about what they are going on and what they cannot afford. The very basic necessities of life.
That a teacher had hurt himself because his debtors have been worrying him for 3 years now. He has been borrowing from every person that he could lay hands on, and that's the pity. People have gone to banks to take loans.
Okay, now tell me, so you are proceeding on Monday?
No, we have issued a statement that we are supposed to meet the employer on Monday.
Right.
The meeting which should have been today has been postponed to Monday. So the Monday, we expect that they should give us something convincing enough to be able to communicate to our members. Other than that, then National Executive will immediately meet after that meeting and then announce a strike.
Tell me in 20 seconds, what will be convincing enough to stop you from going on strike?
Well, as of now, what I would say is that pay the teachers. But then, if we meet at the table and they have a plan B that I don't know, and if it is convincing enough, we will accept.
I see. Thank you very much for your time. Christian Adepoku is president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers. Now, yes.
I appeal to Adepoku and his group and the leadership and rank and file of NAGRAT is to exercise restraint, because payment is being processed. I now get daily receipts of new entrants onto the payroll from the accountant general. I do agree with him that there is a fundamental problem with IPP, the SERCs. And to that extent, the president is even encouraging private sector participation in payroll management, which is part of what a committee on payroll reform is working at. But nonetheless, even if you embark on a strike action, we cannot complete this process before the end of the month. It's a stark truth. And I think that is important that we share with them. And I just gave you the example. When I said psychiatric nurses were to be paid by the end, or at least at the end of September, I was quoted as having no honor. Yet, at least 90 of them were paid at the end of September. We could not have factored in the 348, and I hope that I can give this explanation. As government, can you imagine if by 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th October, September salaries are not paid? I'm sure my colleague Kojo Kwatin, Honorable Kwatin and Co would go to say that even government cannot pay public sector workers. So mindful of that, we needed to stagger the processing of this new entrance and the arrears payment in order that we'll be able to pay overall the public sector workers of this country. Similar to what I just explained, a number of the teachers, I don't have the number, but at least between 2,000 to 5,000 are being processed for payment. We've gotten clearance from the Ministry of Finance to be able to pay that category. But until the audit service certifies, validates it back to GES, I'm unable to influence the process. And I think that the allowances,
that is what
the
also
allowances
takes years
you mentioned
to do,
yourself personally, thanks to your research, that has been paid. I have evidence that the 4.5 million outstanding arrears relating to incremental issue. And to be fair to them, this was brought to my attention at the tripartite by Dimanya, the leader of NAT, concerned about the happenings within the teachers sector. And I think that you have it on point, that it is worrying the way we are treating many of them for long periods without them receiving payment. We have started the process of the reform. We try and speed it up. But like I said, GES, Ministry of Health, the HR systems must work. Their data units must relate well to finance.
Imani Ghana has been talking about the need to devolution for a long time, and you agree that this is the best way to resolve these issues.
It's a process. It doesn't take a day. You have to get district assemblies even to play a role. But I'm saying that ultimately you want to
have the most effective solution, you speed up the process.
And I say, no, we've done our best, and a number of ghosts have even been identified, as I gave you the example. And he himself even relates to the history, era of Bauredu. We've come to clear some of the backlog, and we are still dealing with it.
Briefly tell us about the doctors. Why is it that you still don't have
I'll do doctors and then maybe public services, and then I'll leave it to your panelists.
We have very limited time. Yes,
GMA, government is very close to a deal with the Ghana Medical Association. We have revised our earlier proposal to the GMA, and we are incorporating what ultimately may work out as a major deal between government and GMA. Ultimately, they will have conditions of service which will satisfy many of the issues that they ask for.
What's the level of progress? Are we still at the four of the proposals that you were able to resolve?
No, we have.
Out of the 12 that
we have. I don't want to discuss the specific. There's one specific matter we have to make a referral on, which is on retiring on salaries. We are unable to take a decision because it's a constitutional matter. The Independent Emolument Commission have not been set up. But matters relating to on-call duty, accommodation, and utility, we are striking a delicate balance of a compromise. The leadership of the GMA is traveling to Russia, and as soon as they are back, on or before 30th October, I'm extremely optimistic that we would have concluded. Now on Category 2 and 3 allowance, I'm happy to note that negotiations have been completed by the Public Services Joint Negotiating Committee, led by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission. And for the first time since 2006, government is committed to paying all those deserving within what has been agreed upon. We also have made some major progress in terms of base pay increase. We've announced a 10% base pay increase across board on the base pay for all public sector workers. Okay. And that will mean that we pay based ability to pay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your time on this one. Now, Kweku and the rest of you, I would like to hear you very briefly on these two issues so that we can move on. The Florence I use as an example, she's asking, can you ask the minister for me, how does he see this? Can he survive a month without his pay? I have survived 3 years without my pay.
Unacceptable and unfortunate. We'll deal with it.
Yeah, it's mismanagement. Look, it's unfortunate we do not have the time. Very brief. Strikes have always been around. And therefore, sometimes I look at my brother and I feel sorry for him when I see him the suffering, the agitation of these workers. But let's place what is happening in context. If you look broadly, worker agitation and industrial crisis have been one too many under this administration, especially this year. It is, I see clearly, mismanaging industrial relations. And I'll cite just a couple of examples and come to the lady's point you mentioned. The validation. Validation should never take that long. Validation, when people have been recruited, you want to be sure that those recruitments are legitimate. It's normally a very short period. You see, the unplanned employment that the MDAs employ before the Minister of Finance knows is mismanagement. What I would like to hear from government is how you prevent that. Because if you're always going to sit in the center and to say somebody gets recruited without resort to the Ministry of Finance, and so we are making an arrangement to absorb, you are never going to get around this problem, even though it is old. I'm aware that before this administration came, there were efforts to terminate that. I want to see what the progress is. Is it that now you can't do that, or people are now allowed to employ and then they sit there 3 months, they say we're going through a process of absorbing because we were not informed? It is a law that let the man who is controlling the purse decide whether the state is in a position to employ more people before you do that. We should see government operationalize that so we do not have this. Look, this woman's case is it's similar to government not releasing money to even the statutory funds. We know that we have to fulfill this responsibility, but really we don't have the money. That is what it really is. That when there's the competing needs for resources, the government looks around and say, those of you whose pay have to come, whose salaries have to come, you hold on a bit, and I'll do other things. That's the result we're getting. If government is going to tell workers that your salaries and all the things you deserve are not really a priority because the national purse is in crisis and we need money badly, then the response you get is strike action, because 3 years the woman has to feed. And so for her, yes, you may have mismanaged the resources, and therefore at the moment there is no money. But it is no reason why my children must go to bed without food. And so, Honourable Minister, you cannot deal with this matter first without dealing with the resource problem. But also, I think government's engagement with workers itself has to improve. If it is, even with the Black Queens, even that we have to mismanage this and there has to be some kind of crisis. The NAGRAT is talking about collective bargaining certificate. If government does not want it issued, government must put the reasons forward. This should not turn into industrial crisis. Allowances have to be paid. If you have to pay, you have to pay. If you are sitting with the workers, there's no money, that is your burden. What have you done with the money? A government that has received oil proceeds, a government that has charged more taxes than any other administration, a government that has borrowed far more than any other administration has borrowed over the period. And yet you tell workers that, look, we can't pay you because there's no money, and you think people are going to accept that.
So you're saying what? There's deliberateness in not paying them.
There's mismanagement.
He's saying that borrow to pay.
Interesting.
No,
interesting.
You're going too much.
Right.
Samson, I just want to conclude on this point where I need the minister to take that away. One, government will have to look at its resource management. It is a result of the borrowing. But two, government must stop this, wait and let a strike action start. Then you see government going there to do crisis management. If government will do those two things, we will have a reduction in the crisis we are seeing. Otherwise, I just don't see any solution going forward. And as we enter next year, we are going to have more of these crises.
Interesting. Now, Kwaku, briefly, what do you say about all of this, and including the doctor's, situation? He gives us some sort of good news, but how long is it taking to get to that?
I'm fatigued, I'm tired. I want to, maintain my sanity. I'm tired. I have absolutely nothing to say on this matter.
Why?
We're just recycling. It's the same old story. The same old story. I want to maintain my mental balance. So if you can excuse me. Rather, I've just had a message from the Tiger Eye people that the police have swiftly intervened and he's now with the police.
That's great.
So they are asking us to thank the IGP for a quick fix that they have instituted. But this labor one,
that's
please,
very good.
Leave me out.
That's very good. That's very good. So if you just heard Kweku say the announcement we made a while ago about Ishmael Hussein of the Tiger Eye team who had been, taken hostage at Filling Point at somewhere in Tamale has been rescued by the police.
And the police has arrested one of the perpetrators.
Okay. And one person has been arrested. One person has been arrested. Others who were involved have run away. And the Tiger Eye team want to say thank you to the IGP for the swift manner in which they dealt with this. Now, let me hear from Dr. Godfred. How do you feel about these labor issues and the way they are being handled? Do you sympathize with the minister like Kweku says?
The sympathy perhaps will come from the fact that resources are not enough. But the less of it will also come from the fact of how we manage our little resources. I think there are concerns, genuine concerns, because there is no country on earth that has more than enough. Every country is limited, or challenged to some extent. But the difference is how we are able to maximize the alternative uses of those scarce resources. And I think as a country, we don't seem to be doing well along those lines. My worry is the underlying issue, which is productivity. People go on strike, certain days, certain months are lost. You cannot recover it.
Do you think it's acceptable at all in the first place that someone is employed and they wait for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they are not paid?
I can't understand that. And procedure cannot justify that.
No, they say there's no money. Actually,
yes, procedure cannot justify that. At the end of the day, the employer, you see, my worry is that the little things that doesn't constitute much seem to hold us back so much as a country going forward. Some of these strikes have come as a result of allowances, condition of service. If you look at it on a monthly basis, perhaps it constitutes less than their total salary. But you would have paid them the actual salary. And what constitutes less than 10% of that is rather keeping them at home. So where is the productivity? My understanding from the single spine was that, we were on several spines before, now we are on one spine, hoping the spine doesn't break. With a single spine, I thought that we would have harmonized all these issues such that the issue of agitation, strike here and there would have been resolved once and for all. But it doesn't seem that is the way forward. I don't know how the implementation of the single spine and all of that has gone. But strike actions are not good indicators of good economic governance. And I think government will have to be a little bit proactive with managing labor relations. I've been a member of UTAC before, and I do not think that people genuinely enjoy going on strike. But it looks to the majority out there that the only language government understands is strike, or the threatening of that or something. So I think that maybe some kind of outreach, some kind of proactiveness from government will help ease these concerns so that at the end of the day, we'll be able to have a harmonized labor front that ensures that productivity doesn't suffer ultimately, because we have been told that the single spine has put so much money in the pocket of people. Then one's expectation will be that now the employer will demand productivity commensurate with the level of pay that people are taking. So you don't want to sleep and wake up and hearing strike here, strike there, conditions of service, bargaining power, and all of that. So
do you have a feeling also that the employees appear to have an attitude that doesn't help the smooth implementation of the single spine?
Certainly, you cannot blame only government, but except that you have to look at maybe the magnitude, and then you realize that, okay, what are the options for me pushing my agenda? And if the other options are not being taken seriously, then probably you want to use the tool that will make the greater impact, regardless of the implication or the cost or the moral hazard of it. So I think that it's not a comfortable thing.
Okay. I asked, for example, that question, and this is very final, that question about, and I've had to repeat it here on this show, you know, that the think tank Imani Ghana has repeatedly said, for example, that, look, the way to get doctors not to go on strike any longer, en masse, in the way they do, is that let's pursue a speedy devolution of the process. Let the various districts be responsible for them, so that it will not happen that all the districts have failed to pay their doctors at one point. So that if there will be strike, it may be just for maybe, you know, those who belong to one particular district, and that will help. Do you think there is an agency in that commitment? The minister says they are doing
I think there's some wisdom in that. That could also create some kind of competition, a healthy competition among the various. And I want to believe that ultimately we should be getting to a point where when I finish, I choose where I want to work, depending on the various conditions.
Exactly.
That will also reflect variations, the level of development and all of that. So I believe that will also make government a little thin and focus on the core issues. I want to believe that, I mean, we can't have a whole minister who is just working from one meeting to the other just to resolve labor issues. What are the other core issues? And I want to believe that it doesn't also help the president. I mean, with all this news here and there, how does he get his peace of mind to focus on the core things? So it's something that we all have to debate and analyze and get a better understanding going forward.
Right. If you're looking for a very safe way to send money and receive same, then the best way is to resort to the convenient banking that you find at Bank of Africa. Bank of Africa, they have branches all over the country, and they are providing you the best that you can ever have. They also have their products, the electronic products such as Swift money transfers via Western Union, MoneyGram, and Worry. You can bank on the go with the electronic products, B-Web and B-Mobile, and also pay your fees and utility bills, and that is value for your time. Bank of Africa is as strong as a group and close as a partner. How big is your dream? Are you on MTN? Your MTN number can change your life with MTN Dream Number. Win up to 10,000 Ghana cedis daily. That is cash they're going to give you daily when 2 to 7 digits of your MTN number match exactly with the daily drawn number from right to left. All you have to do is to send start to 451 to subscribe daily for only 60 pesos. Your MTN number could make you rich. Terms and conditions apply. MTN, everywhere you go. And this show is also brought to you by Star Assurance. And Star Assurance, insure with them and enjoy the partnership with the family that is always smiling. Star Assurance, they've been creating smiles since 1985. So let's celebrate 30 solid years of partnership. Log on to www.starassurance.com, or you could visit their offices nationwide. Call them 030-224-0632 and enjoy solid insurance all year round. Sasso spray, Sasso mosquito, and these are the insecticides that you would want to get, because Sasso spray, for example, has a sweet lemon fragrance that you want to have in your room. Sasso mosquito coil is smokeless. The Sasso coil and spray, they are free from catarrh, headaches, and chest infections. So insist on Sasso. Is the best you can have on the market. We'll take a quick break. We'll return to deal with the Eurobond question. You're welcome back. Now, some messages here. How can someone work without pay for 3 years? The minister should not give excuses. The systems are weak and should be electronically developed and expedited so that genuine workers can be paid as soon as possible. Tony in Suyani says, I have taught for 1 year, 4 months before I was, okay, you taught for 1 year, 4 months before you were paid for 3 months last year. Until now, I have not been paid the arrears. I have filled several forms to get this money paid, but to no avail. That's interesting. And again, when you are paying the arrears, you don't pay it with interest. Okay?
No, you see, we don't even pay all because of the due diligence
Kofi Atta in Cambridge in the UK says that the minister's explanation regarding public sector workers who are not paid for 2 to 3 years is flawed. How long does it take for the validation committee to certify that a worker has been engaged on a particular date at a particular institution? It is at post and working. That should not take more than 1 month. The system of unpaid salaries of new workers for 2 years or more encourages corruption. Interesting. And once again, I tell you that if you're looking for convenient banking to send and receive money safely, the place to go is Bank of Africa. You can heave a sigh of relief now because at Bank of Africa Ghana, you can access swift money transfers via Western Union and MoneyGram, as well as Worry. Bank on the go with the electronic banking product, B-Web and B-Mobile. You can also pay your bills and your fees and utility bills. That's value for your time. They have branches all over the country. Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner.